Greetings, Benjamin J. from BENZTRAINZ with another in the series. Well, a grand experiment. This, of course, is a Marx micro motor, and I'm going to attempt to mount it in this Santa Fe shell. So I tried the full-size motor, and it did work, but it's really clunky. And so I needed something that was more of the original size of the original motor. Now, the problem with these motors, of course, is the Santa Fe uses much smaller wheels. And these large wheels rub on the inside of the shell as it's running. But in any case, I had a full-size motor in there, and I wanted to try the micro motor. So this is one that I modified for the 6000 originally. As you see, I've got the adapter on it, so I can pull a consist with it. So let's turn this on. So just with the micro motor, this is pulling 12 cars by itself, as you see. So these micro motors have a respectable amount of power. Much different than the full-size motor, but they work. There's no doubt about that. Anyway, so I've modified this, of course. I've epoxied a bolt to the top of it, directly to the coil, as you see. And then I've installed a rubber grommet to fit this hole in the Santa Fe shell. So we can lower this on into position. You see that grommet fills that hole perfectly. And then I'm going to put on a plastic washer and a nut. So the grand experiment, since I was doing this, I thought I'd go ahead and do a video. So a micro motor in place of the original motor in the Santa Fe. As you see, it's never going to look right, but at least it's going to run. So let's see how this runs with a micro motor in it. So as you see, it works. There's no doubt about that. But you can hear the wheels rubbing on the inside of that shell. Like I said, the original wheels are much, much smaller than this. So as an experiment, I might take the dummy wheels and see if I can mount them on this axle. And see if that eliminates the problem of the wheels rubbing on the inside of the shell. But as you see, it makes an instant replacement for the Santa Fe motor. So this actually works quite well. So a micro motor in place of the original. And as you see, it actually runs extremely well. That's pulling 12 cars at 40% power. So if I can replace those wheels with the original size wheels, this would be a perfect drop-in replacement. Now, it's never going to look right because the original motor, of course, had the plastic covers over the wheels. But it does give you a running locomotive where this was just a shell. When I got this, the motor was so rusted it was virtually turning to powder. So I tried putting a full-size motor in it, and it worked, but like I said, it was clunky. This is much, much closer to the original size of the original motor. And it works. If I had a set of original wheels, this would very likely work perfectly. Like I said, there's no way to mount that cover because there's nothing to mount it to on this motor. But it does work, so I just want to do a quick video to document the experiment. As you see, it runs really well. There's no doubt about that. I don't have the light bulb hooked up because I just got this stuck in there. But it definitely runs. There's no doubt about that. It runs really, really well. And it only takes a minute to drop this in there. So if I had a set of original wheels for this, I could swap out those wheels, and this would very likely be a perfect replacement. Like I said, it's never going to be correct because you can't mount the cover over those rear wheels. But at least it gives you a running Santa Fe. In this case, it was free. I got a full refund on this. I paid, I can't even remember, a couple dollars. And the dummy wound up broken in shipping. I contacted the guy. He told me to keep it and refunded my money. But as you see, it gives you a perfect basis for an experiment. And so that micromotor just literally drops in here. And you could clean this up and actually make this look quite respectable. The thing is, it works. It gives you a running Santa Fe locomotive. It's never going to be correct, but then again, it didn't cost anything. And like I said, there is nothing to mount that cover to on this replacement motor. The only way to make this look right is to find an original motor and stick it in here. But since it didn't cost me anything, there's really no point in spending $25, $35 to put a motor in this when I can fabricate something. And although it's never going to be correct, it is at least running. And in this case, running really well. As you see, it has plenty of power. There's no doubt about that. Like I said, if I could put the original size wheels on this would actually work quite well. So, just depends on how much time I want to put into this. But it was a quick experiment. It was easy to do. I've got 4 or 5 of these micro motors, and I don't use them for anything. I mean, really, I don't use them for anything at all. I've got one mounted in that flashlight. I've got one on top of the refrigerator in here. I've got 2 more, I think, under the bench. This one I've had modified and stuck in that 6000 shell. And it works quite well. So I wanted to see if I could mount it in this Santa Fe. And as you see, it runs just splendidly. Plenty of power, even pulling this many cars. This is a Lionel Consist. But as you can see, that runs good. It doesn't cost anything at all. In this case, it was free, so I'm free to do lots of experiments without fear of losing anything. So, like I said, it's far from perfect, but it's running. That's the nice thing about it. And again, it's never going to be perfect, but it gives you a running Santa Fe when all I had before was a dead shell. The motor was just rusted beyond repair. There was nothing I could do for it or do with it. It was literally turning to powder. So I scavenged what I could off of it, which wasn't much. And then I put the dummy truck in this, which made it a really effective dummy. But I wanted to try to put a motor in it. So I used a full-size motor, and it worked. But like I said, it's clunky. This is much closer to the original size of the original motor. And it's just the micro motor, the Marx micro motor. I epoxied that bolt to the top of it, added that rubber grommet so it fit directly into the hole on top of the Santa Fe, and it's up and running virtually instant. And of course, if you want it to run in reverse, you can just loosen the nut and actually turn the motor around and it'll run backwards. Whether I'm going to pursue this or not, I don't really know. Like I said, if I could swap out these wheels with the original size wheels, this would actually work absolutely perfectly. It's never going to be perfect, but at least it's a running Santa Fe. And in this case, it was free. So just wanted to do a quick video to document the experiment. It sure does work. There's no doubt about that. So I could run it as is, just add a coupler to the back of it, and I have a running Santa Fe locomotive. So it's far from perfect, but it was free and it was a fun experiment. Best part, of course, is the fact that it works. It gives you a running Santa Fe locomotive. In this case, it's pulling 12 Lionel cars with no problem at all using a Marx micro motor. So a really, really simple modification. And I could clean this up and actually make this look quite good. Whether I'm going to put any more work into it, I have no idea. This was just an experiment. But you can see how well that grommet fits into that hole. And it just literally snaps on and off. And it's a micro motor, of course, and I've just epoxied a brass screw directly to the top of the coil. And I just used epoxy putty. The stuff gets really hard. And there's no stress on that. And it's a perfect place to mount this shell. And then by adding that grommet, of course, that's just a rubber grommet, it fills that hole perfectly. So you can literally just drop this thing into position. That grommet snaps into that hole, as you see, and even without the nut and bolt, or without the nut and the washer, it runs perfectly. like I said, you can turn the motor around and it'll actually run backwards. So, always fun to experiment. And the only way to find out if something is going to work is to do the experiment and see. So as you see, a plastic washer, a rubber grommet, and a 832 nut. And you have a running Santa Fe using a Marx micromotor in place of the original. Is it perfect? Nope. Is it correct? Nope, not that either. But it's running and it's pulling 12 cars with no problem at all, as you see. Total cost, $0. So it's simple, it's easy. Best of all, it works. Like I said, if I could put the original size wheels on that motor, this would work perfectly. It's still never going to look right because there's no cover over the wheels themselves. But it gives you a running Santa Fe locomotive where before you only had a shell. So anyway, just a quick experiment. Just wanted to document it. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.